Hello everyone and welcome back to the Chess24 Legends of Chess tournament. We are in the third match in Nepomniachtchi versus Anish Giri, and for some reason in the previous video I mentioned that Anish won the second match and he was able to retaliate and force match 3. However, I said that he won in the rapid section when in fact he won in Armageddon. I have no idea why I said that. That's just how it is on this channel. Sometimes I'm gonna say the weirdest stuff, so don't take it personally. I am sorry about that. So getting back to this one, this is the third match. It seems the image is blinking a little bit, changing colors. No idea why that's happening. But yeah, the 4 rapid games ended in a draw. So the first 4 rapid games ended in a draw. The first blitz game ended in a draw, and now this is the second blitz game. And whether this one ends in a draw or not will depend on do we go into Armageddon. So Nepomniachtchi with the white pieces opens with e4. And yeah, sorry about that. So e5 by Giri, and now knight to f3. We have knight to c6 and d4. For the final blitz game, Jan goes for the Scotch. And if you don't know, the blitz games here in the Legends of Chess tournament are 5 minutes per player plus 3 seconds increment. So e captures on d4 and knight captures on d4. We have knight to f6 and now knight captures on c6. We have b captures and e5, going for the Mises variation of the Schmidt, of the Scotch, and now queen to e7, pinning the pawn so you can't capture. We have queen to e2, now preparing to capture, and knight to d5. And this has been played, well, for a very long time. The top move being c4. We already mentioned this a few videos ago, but nowadays h4. And it's very interesting how, you know, just neural networks are taking... well, so much from the game. I mean, player, you can't really learn how to brute force your way through a position by imitating stalkers, but you can learn a thing or two from Leela about opening theory and the positional stuff. So here h4, we have a5. Usually white will play c4 here, like we mentioned, and then black wants to reply with bishop to a6. But here, as white already wasted a move playing h4, black will now play a5. So when he does play bishop to a6, he will already have a pawn on a5. So c4 by Nepo and the bishop to a6 by Giri. We have knight to d2. And here we have knight to b6, and interestingly, knight to b4 has been played once in this position. Alexander Morozevich lost to Dmitry Yakovenko in the 2017 Russian Blitz Championship. So knight b6 here by Giri is a new move in the position, and it is already as of move 10 that we have a completely new game. So Nepo just continues pushing his passed h-pawn, not a passed h-pawn, just an h-pawn, and that's what you do nowadays in every opening. We have queen to e6, Giri makes room to develop the dark square bishop, and now even h6. And now the thing is, if g6, which obviously can be played, you're going to play b3, put the bishop on this diagonal, and the neural networks such as Leela Chess0 showed that this will definitely be a great asset for white later on in the game. So after h6, we have g captures on h6 by Giri. It's not the cleanest pawn, but it is still a pawn up. So you're gonna play bishop here, probably bring the rook over to the g file, and for the moment keep your extra pawn. So b3 by Nepo, he just continues development, wants to develop his dark square bishop to this very nice diagonal, and a queenside castle by Giri. Bishop to b2, continuing development, and now bishop to g7, and a queenside castle. We have rook h to e8, now putting a lot of pressure on the e5 pawn, and of course f4. Nepo defends it, and now we're in a position where black has to decide what to do. The bishop and the knight aren't doing all that much. Nepo did a very nice job. This c4 pawn really putting a stop to everything. And probably what you should play something like d5 or maybe d6. But Giri wants to save his central pawn and bust open the position with the f pawn, and he plays f6. And it's always interesting when someone plays f6 whether this is one of those positions where it's actually okay to play f6 or not. So here it's not, and you're welcome to feel free to, not welcome to feel free, but you're either welcome or you are feel free to pause the video and find the move Nepo played while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on spotting the knight move, as it's just brilliant. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it's knight to e4. And it's interesting that Giri already spent some 2 minutes from his 5 minutes starting position, whereas Nepo just blitzed out everything. So this is well within his preparation, and he knows what he's doing here. So here, the problem is you're threatening knight to c5, which will attack the queen and then win the bishop on a6. So of course, you cannot defend with the king, as then the king also runs into a fork. So what you could do is play bishop to b7 to kind of prevent that, but then you just get e captures on f6. And now this is a defended pass pawn. It's just a very, very tough position for black to play. You don't really have a good move. You can move the bishop, but that's just it. If you go for trades here, it doesn't work out well for you. You're going to capture on g7, and then after, let's say, captures on f4, you're going to capture here, capture that, play rook h8, and it's game over. So this is what Nepo is hoping for. Giri finds a different idea. Giri says, okay, you capture my bishop. I'm just going to play f captures on e5. And okay, Nepo goes for it, knight to c5 with an attack on the bishop and the queen. And Giri spots queen to f5. He wants to meet the knight captures on a6 with e captures on f4, opening up an attack on the queen and on the bishop here. And the king could be somewhat loose here on c1. So Nepo goes for it, knight captures on a6 and e captures on f4, opening up an attack here. So you have to move the queen, and here Nepo goes for queen to d3. It's hard to imagine from a position like this, but queen to d2 is actually the way to victory. The point is, you want to be able to play c5 and defend your knight on a6. That's how you need to play it. Point is that after this captures and captures, and let's say the king attacks the knight, you always have this c5 move, and it's now perfectly fine as the knight is defended, and your knight is also under attack. You will have to move it. Then comes queen captures on a5, and so on. And it seems like queen to d3 does pretty much everything the same. It even offers a queen trade. The problem is it is a little bit different, because here Giri first plays bishop captures on b2 with check, king captures, and now queen to e5 with check. Now, point being that the king is in check, and you have to figure out what you're going to do. For example, if queen blocks, then you can just captures, and then bring the rook to e5, and the rook from e5 will guard the c5 square, so the knight cannot escape. On the other hand, you could also block with queen to c3, which is what Nepo did, but now Giri gets his idea into the game. King to b7, now threatening to win the knight here. And here the problem is, if you go c5 now, then it doesn't really work, because black has queen captures, king captures, and now knight d5 comes with check. The king is no longer on b2 like in the line we've shown. And after king b2, now you get knight to e3, and you will have to give up the rook here, because if you move the rook, let's say you will have to give up the rook even here. After check, king moves, you have to give it up now. Because if you don't, if you try something else, you have to give it, you have to capture it instead of moving the king. If you do this, let's say knight e3, then you're gonna, well, either move the rook, you lose the bishop, and then after the bishop is lost, king captures on a6 is coming. So the thing is, after king to b7, we have queen captures on e5 by Nepo, and now rook captures on e5, guarding that c5 square, and here just rook captures on h6. And now, okay, you cannot capture right away, because then just check will pick up the knight here, but it does allow c5. So this is the little problem that why queen to d2 was better than queen to d3, what Nepo played. But obviously you can't have everything analyzed at home, and you know, in a blitz game, things like these are impossible to find. So here the knight is lost, so you might as well grab a pawn while losing it. So knight captures on c5, we have rook captures, and now rook captures on h7. And all of a sudden, from that really winning position from white, we get this position where white is better, a bit more active, but the material on the board is completely equal. So here, rook to f8, defending the pawn here, and now bishop to e2, not allowing this pawn push, but also preparing bishop to f3, which blockades the black pawn and also puts the bishop to this beautiful diagonal. We have d6 by Giri. c6 is the way to go. Then we move the king, and then maybe move the d pawn. However, Giri played d6 here, and it's really an epic moment in this game, because this completely blunders the pawn. Rook captures on d6 is a free pawn. You will not be able to capture back because of the pin. Problem is, Nepo, of course, when playing such an elite player like Giri, does not expect Giri to blunder a pawn like this, and of course he misses the idea, and he just continues with the development of bishop to f3 check. And I mean, this happens very often in chess, and there's even the case of I hope all of you know Josh Waitzkin. I remember when I was enjoying his his lectures in the Chess Master series. I think it was Chess Master 11, the Grandmasters edition. He mentions that he was playing in some sort of a junior state championship, and that he was playing for the first place. And in the final game, he was playing against an opponent who hung a full rook, and Josh just didn't see it. He was, so focused on the game, and he didn't expect his opponent. He like attacked the rook, and his opponent didn't move it. He just played something else. And both of them completely missed it. He said his opponent after the game told him that he immediately saw that he blundered the rook, but that he was like having this super cool poker face so that Josh wouldn't, realize that something went wrong. So Josh missed it, but in the end was also able to win the game. So that's like a happy story in the end. But yeah, it's not uncommon to blunder a move like that, as this is a blitz game. Stuff like this happens way more, even in classical chess. So bishop to f3 check, sometimes called a case of double blindness. So bishop f3 check, we have king to b8 by Giri, and now rook to e1, preparing rook to e7, which will pose serious problems for black. So knight c8, preventing the rook lift all the way to e7, and now rook to e6. A nice rook lift, which will, you are now just preparing to somehow double up here. So rook to g5, and now king to c3. Nepo brings the king into the game. We have rook f to g8, and now rook to f7, going after the f4 pawn. And it seems like you can't defend it. However, there is a very sneaky way, and Giri plays it rook to e5, saying if you capture here, then I get a defended pawn here, and if you go after it, I'll just defend it like this, and everything is perfectly fine. So after rook e5, we have rook to h6, now preparing to bring the rook over to h7 to put pressure on the c7 pawn. And here it's like Giri fell asleep in game 6 after an entire day of playing. He played a4, and he just completely forgot about Nepo's real threat, which is doubling of the rooks on the 7th rank. So here, rook h to h7 by Nepo, and now there really is not all that much you can do. Giri played a captures on b3. We have rook captures on c7, now threatening rook b7 check, and if the king has to go, under the mask of the bishop, that's just game over. So rook e3 check by Giri, we have king to b2, and now you cannot allow rook b7 check, so here Giri just captured the bishop, gave up the exchange, g captures and b captures on a2. But now we have king captures on a2 and rook to g3. Here Giri is now hoping to create a passed f-pawn, but rook b7 check, king a8, and now comes rook b3. Defending the pawn, we have rook g2, king a3, and now rook to c2. Going after the c4 pawn, we have rook to c7 is also playable, just defending it and winning the knight, so not a problem there. Or rather, okay, you don't have to win the knight. For example, rook c7, knight a7, and then you can go rook to b6, but it requires some additional moves. So instead, Nepo just went with rook to b4. He defends the pawn, and he's going to win the knight on the next move by playing rook to h8. So rook c3 check, king a4, or rather not king a4, king to b2, attacking the rook. Rook captures on f3, and now rook to h8, just attacking the knight. The knight, of course, cannot move, and that's just it. Giri played a few more moves, rook f2 check, king c3, and it was in this position on move 45 that Anish Giri resigned the game, and with it the match, as after 4 rapid games that ended in a draw, 1 blitz game that ended in a draw, Nepo wins game 2 of their blitz section and is now the finalist of the Chess24 Tournament of Legends, and will face Magnus Carlsen in the finals. And yeah, that's it. Tomorrow we continue with this show with the, well, I don't know who I would rather see in the finals. Both Giri and Nepo against Magnus would be excellent. But I don't know. I always kind of feel like Nepo has better chances against Magnus, but it's also hard to say because I think Giri is a more solid player than Nepo, but Magnus doesn't care about solid. Like you have to do something to beat him, and I kind of think Nepo is somewhat better at that. I don't know. In classical chess, I think of course Giri would have much better chances, but here I don't think so. So yeah, it's going to be a pretty wild game, so we'll see what happens. So I do hope you enjoyed it. I would like to thank Larry Dingle, James Moore, Patrick Moore, Thomas Moore, and Divya Mohanarangan for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot, I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of the Legends of Chess tournament, checking up on your wonderful suggestions, and whatever else happens in the chess world. Thank you all, I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your Sunday.